The colony ship Hopeful Venture was, by galactic standards, a rather humble affair. It wasn't a gleaming ark of advanced technology, nor was it crewed by hardened soldiers forged in stellar wars. It was, primarily, a ship full of families, engineers, farmers, and dreamers, heading for the Kepler-1-8 system to start anew. Their journey was long, their resources carefully managed, and their entertainment often self-made. Central to the ship's morale, and indeed to the lives of many of its younger inhabitants, was Buddy. Buddy was a golden retriever, a creature of boundless enthusiasm, soft fur, and an uncanny ability to know who needed a wet-nose nudge or a comforting presence. He chased holographic balls in the recreation dome, lay patiently at the feet of children during their lessons, and offered a warm, furry anchor in the sometimes sterile environment of deep space. Observing the Hopeful Venture from a cloaked scout ship were the Cathar. The Cathar were a species renowned for their cold logic and intricate understanding of universal mechanics. Insectoid in appearance, with multifaceted eyes that perceived a dozen spectrums humans couldn't, they saw the galaxy as a grand equation to be solved. Emotions, particularly the human variety, were messy variables, inefficient and illogical. Subject designation, Canis familiaris, intoned Unit 734, its voice a dry, clicking monotone. Observation confirms primary function as companion to juvenile and adult Homo sapiens. Resource expenditure for sustenance and medical care appears disproportionate to any logical utility. Unit 216, the vessel commander, adjusted a sensor array. The human attachment to such non-sentient organisms is a documented psychological aberration. It signifies a primitive emotional dependency. We require a fresh biological sample for our ongoing study into species-specific irrationalities. This Buddy specimen is isolated, currently within the designated low-security Agricultural Bay 3, accompanied by only 2 juvenile humans. Acquisition parameters? Asked Unit 734. Standard. Minimal collateral disruption. The resulting emotional distress in the human subjects will provide additional data points on their predictable instability. Unit 216 made a minute adjustment to a control. Proceed. For young Lily and Tom, aged 8 and 10, it was just another afternoon with Buddy in the hydroponics bay. The warm, earthy smell was a pleasant change from recycled air. Buddy was enthusiastically failing to catch a fluttering nutrient moth. One moment, he was mid-pounce, a blur of golden fur and happy barks. The next, a section of the wall shimmered, and 3 tall, chitinous figures stepped through. Before Lily or Tom could scream, a Cathar appendage, swift and precise, fired a small dart into Buddy's flank. He yelped once, a sound of surprise more than pain, then slumped, unconscious. Another Cathar gently but firmly guided the stunned children back, its many-jointed limbs moving with an unnerving grace. The third scooped up Buddy's limp form. Just as quickly as they appeared, they shimmered and were gone, the wall solidifying behind them. The only evidence of their presence was the faint, alien scent of ozone and the sudden, terrible silence where Buddy's playful yips had been. The children's screams, when they finally came, echoed through the nearby corridors. On the Cathar Scout, Unit 734 placed the unconscious golden retriever onto a sterile examination table. Specimen acquired. Vital signs stable. Minimal resistance encountered. The human juveniles exhibited standard distress vocalizations. Excellent, Unit 216 clicked. Begin preliminary dissection protocols. We will analyze its neural pathways for evidence of the irrational emotional imprinting humans project onto it. Back on the Hopeful Venture, the initial shockwave of Buddy's abduction was profound. Tears flowed freely. Children were inconsolable. Adults felt a cold knot of violation. The ship's captain, a stoic woman named Ava Rostova, reviewed the sensor logs. They were faint, almost missed. A brief energy signature, a momentary spatial distortion. Alien. The Cathar, in their logical assessment, had anticipated grief. They had anticipated whaling, perhaps even some disorganized demands for the return of their pet. They had logged human emotional responses to loss extensively from afar. What they had not anticipated was the nature of the Hopeful Venture's crew. These were not soft, pampered citizens of core worlds. Many, like Captain Rostova, were veterans of border skirmishes. Others were engineers who'd kept failing machinery alive on sheer grit in remote outposts. They were people who understood loss, yes, but they also understood action. Captain Rostova addressed the assembled department heads in the briefing room. Her face was grim. "We've been violated. Something was taken from us. Not just a pet, but a member of our community. The logs show a Cathar energy signature. Standard Cathar procedure for biological sampling is clinical. They won't be keeping him comfortable." A murmur ran through the room. Elias Thorne, chief engineer, a man whose hands were permanently stained with grease and ingenuity, spoke first. "Cathar scout vessels are fast, but they prioritize stealth over shielding. They wouldn't expect pursuit. Not for a dog." "Exactly," Rostova said, her eyes hardening. "They underestimate us. They see sentimentality. They don't see what that sentimentality can fuel." She looked around the room. "We're a colony ship. We're not armed for war, but we're not helpless." The shift was palpable. The tears didn't stop entirely, but they were now accompanied by a steely glint in many eyes. The ship's communal spaces, usually filled with chatter and children's games, became hives of quiet, focused activity. Engineers like Thorne began rerouting non-essential power conduits, aiming to supercharge the ship's primary thrusters for a short, brutal burst of speed. The mining lasers, usually employed for asteroid prospecting, were recalibrated, their focusing arrays tightened. They wouldn't vaporize a Cathar hull, but they could certainly blind sensors or disable external modules. The ship's navigation team, using the faint residual FTL signature, began plotting a pursuit course. It was a long shot, but the Cathar, confident in their stealth and their assessment of human priorities, wouldn't be expecting it. Even the children, under the guidance of some of the ex-military colonists, started assembling makeshift items. Old communication drones were stripped and refitted with high-intensity strobes and sonic emitters, designed to disorient, to annoy, to distract. Sarah, Lily's mother, and a former search and rescue pilot, began modifying the ship's single short-range shuttle, reinforcing its frame and bolting on salvaged sensor bafflers. The Cathar on their scout ship were methodically preparing for Buddy's vivisection. Neural activity in the specimen is primarily centered around olfactory and auditory processing, with significant linkages to areas associated with pleasure responses to human interaction, Unit 734 reported. "Illogical." "Indeed," Unit 216 affirmed, observing a holographic display of Buddy's brain scans. "Proceed with the initial incisions once baseline mapping is complete. We must understand the mechanism of this flawed bonding." Suddenly, a proximity alarm blared, a shrill, insistent noise utterly out of place in the Cathar vessel's usually calm environment. "Unidentified vessel approaching at high velocity," a technician drone chirped. "Human registry, it's the colony ship." Unit 216's multifaceted eyes swiveled to the main viewer. The Hopeful Venture, a ship they'd dismissed as a slow-moving target, was bearing down on them, impossibly fast. Its usually benign running lights extinguished, giving it a predatory silhouette. "Impossible," Unit 216 clicked. "Their propulsion systems are insufficient for such acceleration. Their tactical profile is non-aggressive." "They are hailing us," another drone reported, "audio only, unencrypted." Captain Rostova's voice, cold and stripped of all warmth, filled the Cathar bridge. "Cathar vessel, you have taken something that belongs to us. You have approximately 1 minute to return him unharmed, or we will begin disabling your ship piece by piece." Unit 216 experienced a flicker of something its processor struggled to categorize. It wasn't fear, not yet. It was incongruity. The human response was not following established parameters for grief or impotent rage. This was something else. Their threat is illogical. Their vessel is not a combatant. "They are firing," a drone shrieked. Not with missiles or plasma bolts, but with precisely aimed mining lasers. One beam lanced out, striking the Cathar ship's primary sensor antenna. The array sparked, smoked, and went dead. Another beam seared across an external conduit, causing a cascade of minor system failures. Sensors are compromised, external imaging lost on port side. "They are not aiming to destroy," Unit 216 observed, a new, deeply unsettling variable entering its calculations. "They are dismantling." The hopeful venture wasn't fighting like a warship. It was fighting like an angry parent trying to pry open a locked box, or a determined mechanic stripping a stubborn engine. It was relentless, creative, and utterly unconcerned with conventional space combat doctrine. The modified shuttle, piloted by Sarah, launched from the hopeful venture. It was small, agile, and packed with the colonists' jerry-rigged devices. It danced around the Cathar scout, deploying the repurposed drones. High-intensity strobes flashed, designed to overwhelm Cathar photosensitive eyes. Sonic emitters blasted discordant noises, frequencies specifically chosen to interfere with Cathar internal communication systems. Inside the Cathar ship, chaos was blooming. Alarms blared, consoles flickered. The precise, ordered environment was collapsing. Unit 734, about to make the first incision on Buddy, paused as the lights stuttered and a high-pitched whine filled the lab. Buddy, roused by the commotion and the fading sedative, stirred, lifting his head with a confused whimper. "The humans are employing disruptive tactics," Unit 216 stated, its clicking voice now tinged with something akin to strain. "Highly unorthodox, highly irritating." The hopeful venture continued its brutal, methodical assault. Another mining laser blast, expertly aimed by Thorne from the colony ship's bridge, struck a Cathar maneuvering thruster. The scout ship lurched. "Maneuvering thruster 4 offline. We are losing attitude control." "They are hurting us," Unit 216 realized, its logical mind finally grasping the terrifying implication. The humans weren't just attacking, they were controlling the engagement, pushing the Cathar ship towards a dense debris field nearby. The shuttle zipped past the Cathar bridge viewport, and for a moment the Cathar could see the human pilot, her face set in a mask of grim determination, visible through the transparisteel. There was no sign of the emotional instability they had predicted, only cold, focused resolve. "They are attaching something to the hull," a drone cried out. It was a limpet charge, not military grade, but a repurposed mining explosive. Small, but placed with an engineer's knowledge right against an access panel to the Cathar life support system. Captain Ristova's voice came again, flatter, deadlier. "Cathar vessel, this is your final warning. Return Buddy, now." Unit 216 looked at the tactical display. Its ship was crippled, its crew disoriented. The humans were displaying a capacity for systematic, vengeful action that no Cathar behavioral model had ever accounted for. The attachment to the pet was not a weakness, it was a horrifyingly effective motivator. "The specimen, Canis familiaris," Unit 216 began, the words feeling alien in its vocalizer. "Prepare it for immediate transfer." Unit 734, amidst the flickering lights and screeching alarms of the lab, looked at the golden retriever. Buddy was now sitting up, looking confused but wagging his tail tentatively at the Cathar. The alien insectoid paused. This creature, this illogical variable, had triggered a response from its keepers that defied all Cathar understanding of cost-benefit analysis. A section of the Cathar hull near the lab hissed open, forced by the humans' relentless pressure. The shuttle, piloted by Sarah, expertly maneuvered alongside. Its small airlock connected. Sarah's voice, tight with emotion, crackled over the Cathar comms. "Send him out, now." Unit 734, overriding its vivisection protocols, gently nudged Buddy towards the opening. The dog, sensing a familiar human presence beyond, bounded through the makeshift airlock into the shuttle. "We have him!" Sarah's voice, thick with relief, transmitted back to the hopeful Venture. "We have Buddy!" A cheer, raw and triumphant, erupted from the colony ship, audible even over the Cathar's damaged comms. As the shuttle detached and sped back towards the hopeful Venture, Unit 216 watched the human ship. It didn't press the attack further. It simply waited, engines idling, a silent, formidable guardian. The message was clear. "Transmit a Priority 1 warning to Cathar High Command," Unit 216 ordered, its voice devoid of its earlier certainty. "Species Homo sapiens. Addendum to psychological profile. Their emotional attachments, particularly to designated companion organisms, are not indicators of weakness. They are potential triggers for extreme, coordinated, and highly effective retributive action. Avoid provocation of these bonds at all costs. The irrationality is not theirs. It was ours to underestimate them so profoundly." The hopeful Venture, with Buddy safe and sound, turned and slowly resumed its course towards Kepler 186, leaving a crippled and deeply bewildered Cathar scout ship in its wake. The Cathar, for the first time, felt something their logic couldn't quite parse, a nascent sense of dread concerning the small, soft-skinned species they had so casually dismissed. News of the incident of the Golden Beast, as it later became known in hushed Cathar circles, spread slowly but surely. Other species, upon hearing fragments of the tale, would often scoff. Humans, driven to such lengths for a simple animal? Preposterous! But the Cathar knew. They had seen the cold fire in human eyes. They had experienced the terrifying focus that grief, sharpened into rage, could bring. And across the galaxy, on countless ships and stations, if a human was seen with a dog, or a cat, or some other cherished creature, those few who knew the Cathar's secret would give them a slightly wider berth, a new understanding dawning in their eyes. These weren't just pets. They were, in a strange way, a symbol of humanity's most formidable and unpredictable strength, the capacity to love fiercely, and to avenge what they love with an even greater, terrifying ferocity. Buddy, happily munching on a celebratory synth steak back on the hopeful Venture, blissfully unaware of the galactic shift in perception he had caused, just knew he was a very good boy, and that his humans loved him very much, and for him and for them, that was all that mattered.